Before we start, always we acknowledge the indigenous people of this land. We acknowledge and pay respect to the past, present, and future traditional custodians and elders of this nation we call Australia, and the continuation of cultural, spiritual, and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first sovereign nations of the Australian continent. The Gadigal of the Eora Nation are the traditional custodians of this place, we now call Sydney. And Wangal people are the traditional owners of Bearwood, where Siva lives.
Okay, I'm just stopping share so that I can get the music, the link activated.
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो हन्यमाने शरीरे न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे वासांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय वासांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णानि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णानि अन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि अन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि नैनं छिन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति पावकः नैनं छिन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति पावकः न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो न शोषयति मारुतः न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो न शोषयति मारुतः अच्छेद्योऽयमदाह्योऽयम् अक्लेद्यो शोष्य एव च अच्छेद्योऽयमदाह्योऽयम् अक्लेद्यो.
From among the nations, gather you out of all countries and bring you into your own land. Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. I will cleanse you from all shall be my people, and I will be your God. You shall be my people, and I will be your God.
The body is the physical or animal degree of man. From the bodily point of view, man is a share of the animal kingdom. The bodies alike of men and animals are composed of elements held together by the law of attraction. Like the animal, man possesses the faculties of the senses, is subject to heat, cold, hunger, thirst, etc. Unlike the animal, man has a rational soul, the human intelligence. The spirit of man is a beginning, but it has no end. It's continually eternal. The rational soul, meaning the human spirit, does not descend into the body. That is to say, it does not enter it. For descent and entrance are characteristics of bodies, and the rational soul is exempt from this. The spirit never entered this body, so in quitting it, it will not be in need of an abiding place. No, the spirit is connected with the body, as this light is with the mirror. When the mirror is clear and perfect, the light of the lamp will be apparent in it. When the mirror becomes covered with dust or breaks, the light will disappear. The spirit does not need a body, but the body needs a spirit, or it cannot live. The soul can live without the body, but the body without the soul dies. Baha'i scripture, Abdul Baha.
I appeal to you, brothers, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another, so that there may be no divisions among you, and that you may be perfectly united in mind and thought. Finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice, strive for full restoration, encourage one another, be of one mind, live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being in one spirit, and of one mind. Christian scriptures.
O Son of Being, with the hands of power I made thee, and with the fingers of strength I created thee, and within thee have I placed the essence of my light. Be thou content with it, and seek naught else. For my work is perfect, and my command is binding. Question it not, nor have a doubt thereof. O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust? That no one should exalt himself over the other. Ponder at all times in your hearts how ye were created. Since we have created you all from one same substance, it is incumbent on you to, even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same amount, and dwell the same land, that from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. Such is my counsel to you, O concourse of light. Heed ye this counsel, that ye may obtain the fruit of holiness from the tree of wondrous glory. Hidden words, Baha'u'llah.
The one who strikes others is not a hermit. One is not an ascetic who insults others. Not to blame, not to strike, to live restrained under the law, to be moderate in eating, to live alone, and to practice the highest consciousness. This is the teaching of the awakened ones. Blessed is the arising of the awakened. Blessed is the teaching of the truth. Blessed is the harmony of the community. Blessed is the devotion of those who live in peace. Let us live in joy, not hating those who hate us. Among those who hate us, we live free of hate. Let us live in joy, free from greed among the greedy. Among those who are greedy, we live free of greed. Let us live in joy, though we possess nothing. Let us live feeding on joy, like the bright gods. Buddhist scriptures.
I said to thee, weapons reach not the life. Flame burns it not, waters cannot overwhelm. No dry winds wither it. Impenetrable, unentered, unassailed, unharmed, untouched, immortal, all arriving, stable, sure, invisible, ineffable, by word and thought encompassed, ever all itself, thus in the soul declared. Govern thy heart, constrain the entangled sense, resist the false, soft sinfulness which saps knowledge and judgment. Yeah, a word is strong, but what discerns it's stronger, and the mind strongest, and high o'er all the ruling soul. Wherefore, perceiving him who reigns supreme, but forth full force of soul in thy own soul. Hindu scripture, Bhagavad Gita.
The believers are nothing else than brothers in Islam. So make reconciliation between your brothers and fear Allah, that you may receive mercy. O mankind, we created you from male and female and made you into nations and tribes, that ye may know each other, not that ye may despite each other. Verily, the most honor of you in the sight of Allah is my eye is so getting so bad, is he who is the most righteous of you, and Allah has full knowledge and is fully informed. That is from the Quran. Arabs have no superiority over non-Arabs, and non-Arabs have no superiority over Arabs. You are all equal except by piety and good actions. I leave behind me two things, the Quran and my example, the Sunnah, and if you follow this, you will never go astray. Prophet's last sermon. The similitude of believers in regard to mutual love, affection, and fellow feeling is that of one body. When any limb of each aches, the whole body aches because of sleeplessness and fever. That is from the Hadith, Islamic scripture. Sorry, my eyes is so bad that I can't read properly.
That's good.
Know that the power and the comprehension of the human spirit are of two kinds. That is to say, they perceive and act in two different modes. One way is through instruments and organs. Thus, with this eye it sees, with this ear it hears, with this tongue it talks. Such is the action of the spirit, and the perception of the reality of man by means of organs. That is to say, the spirit is the seer through the eyes. The spirit is the hearer through the ear. The spirit is the speaker through the tongue. The other manifestation of the powers and actions of the spirit is without instruments and organs. For example, in the state of sleep, without eyes it sees, without an ear it hears, without a tongue it speaks, without feet it runs. Briefly, these actions are beyond the means of instruments and organs. How often it happens that it sees a dream in the world of sleep, and its signification becomes apparent 2 years afterward in corresponding events. In the same way, how many times it happens that a question which one cannot solve in the world of wakefulness is solved in the world of dreams. In wakefulness, the eye sees only for a short distance, but in dreams, he who is in the east sees the west. By Abdul Baha.
Thou hast asked me concerning the nature of the soul. Know verily that the soul is a sign of God, a heavenly gem whose reality the most learned of men hath failed to grasp, and whose mystery no mind, no however acute, can ever hope to unravel. It is the first among all created things to declare the excellence of its creator, the first to recognize his glory, to cleave to his truth, and to bow down in adoration before him. If it be faithful to God, it will reflect his light and will eventually return unto him. If it fail, however, in its allegiance to its creator, it will become a victim to self and passion and will, in the end, sink in their depths. Baha'i Scriptures.
Know thou that the soul of man is exalted above and is independent of all infirmities of body or mind. That a sick person showeth signs of weakness is due to the hindrance that interpose themselves between his soul and his body. For the soul itself remaineth unaffected by any bodily ailments. Consider the light of the lamp. Though an external object may interfere with its radiance, the light itself continued to shine with undiminished power. In the like manner, every malady afflicting the body of man is an impediment that prevented the soul from manifesting its inherent might and power. When it leaveth the body, however, it will evince such ascendancy and reveal such influence as no force on earth can equal. Every pure, every refined and sanctified soul will be endowed with tremendous power and shall rejoice with exceeding gladness. Baha'i scripture.
Together the hearts unite and bind. Together the hearts join in accord all the souls. Join in accord all the souls. Oh Lord, make these faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Unite and bind together the hearts. Unite and bind together. Join in accord all the souls. Join in accord all the souls. Oh Lord, make these faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Unite and bind together. Join in accord all the souls. Oh Lord, make these faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Unite and bind together. Join in accord
Well, thank you, Siva, for a wonderful devotional program. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce David, Dr. David Levick, who I met about 25, 30 years ago. And finally, I get to find out more about David. I mean, he was a very bright, friendly, collaborative person, and that's all I knew. But now I know that he's an academic, a Baha'i for 35 years, who has been at various times a print media journalist, a student of complexity science and its application to organizations and businesses, a logician and a promoter of the application of logic for organizational improvement and project delivery, and a lover of humanity and the natural world. He has contributed to the book Building Sustainable Communities, Environmental Justice and Global Citizenship. In this session, he will explore the role of our identity and self-worth in overcoming social issues. It's my pleasure to introduce you, David.
Thank you, friends. I'll just correct Mr. Perry there. He's given me a doctorate when I don't actually have one. So he's praised me too much there, unfortunately. So one day, perhaps. But I would like to talk to you about identity and social issues, particularly explore the role of our identity and self-worth in overcoming some of our current social issues informed by the writings of Baha'u'llah and the Baha'i faith. How I'm going to do that, we're going to look at some social problems and their root causes, defining ourselves and the discrepancy between these and our limitless capacities. I want to then look at the seeking of preference and distinction to compensate for this difference that we see in ourselves, and then have a look at a more comprehensive identity based on our essential reality. We'll then have a look at a shared identity and its inherent validation of our worth, and how a shared identity creates conditions of oneness, which basically is the theme of those readings that we've just had. Implicated in all of this is education as the source of knowing what we are and how to act accordingly, and the value of ideas versus the value of an individual human being. And finally, we'll look at all of that knowledge and see what implications it has for moving forward for us. So some of the social problems that I'm thinking about that we can all see in our communities are things like domestic violence, inequality between men and women, homelessness, extremes of wealth and poverty, famine and prejudice. I mean, there's plenty of others. You might want to add some more to that. And I'm thinking, how is it that these, what is going through the person's mind that A, allows this to happen, and why do we perpetuate it, so to speak? So I believe it has something to do with identity, the identity that we adopt, and the values that we hold that allows us to create an us and them, and by which we need to be externally validated. We don't see others as being inherently worthy and valuable. So the effects of the worldview that creates and allows an us and them, and that we learn to seek validation from outside ourselves, each of these reinforce each other. And I think the effects of these can be traced back to the West's collective loss, or the loss of the West's collective and individual relationship with God and his revelation, when the pendulum swung totally away from God towards materialism, rationalism, and the validity of reason to explain and justify our experience of the world. In our times, it's resulted in the application of the laws of economics of the physical world to ourselves, And I draw a lot on the work of the Baha'i scholar, Dr. William Hatcher, who elaborates on this a lot. You would be, do yourselves a favor and go listen to some of his presentations. But by that, we apply the laws of economics from the physical world to ourselves, so that we must seek to be different and rarer and possess characteristics that are more scarce than those of others, in order that we be more greatly validated as being worthy human beings. And why do we think this way? And it's because we have given primacy to the scientific physical definition of ourselves, that because it's of the physical world, it's inherently limited and deficient. We've also given primacy to empiricism, I think, the valuing of physical things that can be defined, measured, and categorized, such as our height, our skin color, our financial worth, our training and intellect, over a more comprehensive understanding of ourselves that embraces the full range of the human experience, that includes dimensions of love, compassion, generosity, altruism, and countless other virtues. It's like we're defining a table as a flat surface. And yeah, that's a characteristic of a table, having a flat surface. But it's not a comprehensive definition by any means that would make you understand that this might be a table. In the same way, by only defining ourselves from physical, scientific characteristics, we limit what we understand of ourselves. So interestingly, each of these virtues of love, compassion, generosity, altruism can be seen to be limitless. No matter how much you love one particular person, you can still find more love to give to another, and another, and another. Similarly with compassion, it's limitless because they're from a different realm than the physical. But of course, just a word of warning there, let us not conflate the material means to express these virtues with our unlimited capacity to possess them. And interestingly, perhaps because these virtues, qualities, and capacities are limitless and difficult to comprehend, it is the reason why we effectively disregard them as being essential components of our individual being. They're so close to us and so much a part of our essence that they become invisible. I just wonder if I could ask Colin to please read this quotation. Thanks.
Say, my creatures are even as the leaves of a tree. They proceed from the tree and depend upon it for their existence, yet remain oblivious of their root and origin. Say, my creatures are even as the fish of the deep. Their life dependeth upon the water, and yet they remain unaware of that which, by the grace of an omniscient and omnipotent Lord, sustaineth their very existence. Indeed, their heedlessness is such that were they asked concerning the water and its properties, they would prove entirely ignorant. Baha'u'llah.
So maybe there is something else there that we should be looking at. But of course, in the meantime, what we're actually doing is we're resorting to more accessible and comprehensible characteristics of ourselves that can be seen and measured. But Baha'u'llah has this warning for us. And Ahmad, if I could perhaps ask you to read this quotation, please.
Sure. And amongst the realms of unity is the unity of rank and station. It redoundeth the exaltation of the cause, glorifying it among all peoples. Ever since the seeking of preference and distinction came into play, the world had been laid waste. It had become desolate. Those who have guffed from the ocean of divine utterance and fix their gaze upon the realm of glory should regard themselves as being on the same level as the others and in the same station. Were this matter to be definitely established and conclusively demonstrated through the power and might of God, the world would become as the apple paradise. Indeed, man is noble, inasmuch as each one is a repository of the signs of God. Nevertheless, to regard oneself as superior in knowledge, learning, or virtue, or to exalt oneself or seek preference is a grievous transgression. Great is the blessedness of those who are adorned with the ornament of this unity and have been graciously confirmed by God. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you. So because our discernment is now focused on the limited material aspects of our nature, we love, respect, and value more those people who share our values and devalue those who don't. We create an us and them. We hold these values in the material ways we measure them so dearly to our being that we conflate them with our identity. So who is us? Us are those who share identity, and them are those who don't share enough of our identity characteristics that we ourselves prioritize. So how is it we can create identity, or how is it that we do create this identity? And I think it comes back to our cultural values that we pick up through our growing up, our physical characteristics, but these are themselves arbitrarily assigned. Like, why is skin color important to people, and yet eye color doesn't get a mention? You know, other elements that create identity are our financial situation, our religion, our profession. And yet all of these are physical characteristics and therefore inherently limited and finite, or based on the expression of the intellect, which is also somewhat limited. But how did we used to define ourselves? And how has Baha'u'llah redefined us? Gabrielle, could I get you to read that first quotation there from the Bible, please?
Sure. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So God created man in his own image, and in the image of God created him. Upon the inmost reality of each and every...
Keep going, Gabrielle.
Upon the inmost reality of each and every created thing, he hath shed the light of one of his names, and made it a recipient of the glory of one of his attributes. Upon the reality of man, however, he hath focused the radiance of all his names and attributes, and made it a mirror of his own self. Alone of all created things, man hath been singled out for so great a favour, so enduring a bounty. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you. The names and attributes of God came up more particularly for humankind during Islam, and then during the Babi religion, and now the Baha'i faith. So where I'm going with this is that, I'll just elaborate on this idea of attributes. Like, an attribute of God is power. And yet there's many names of God that come from that attribute, such as the most powerful, the avenger, the all-conquering, the mighty. You know, they're all based on this concept of or attribute of power. And in the same way, the fact that we are animated, Baha'u'llah here is saying in this quotation that we're animated by these names and attributes of God. And it's not a new idea. It goes back 4,000 years or so, 5,000 years to the Hebrew scriptures, when we can see that let us make man in our image. And it's not a physical image, it's a spiritual image of all those names and attributes. So we share this ability to mirror all the names and attributes of God, each of us. So this creates a point of unity for all humans, a station of divine unity, a definition of human being that is not limited, a definition of human being as a reflection of the names and attributes and qualities of God. Although difference can be perceived, of course, it is secondary to our essential ability and capacity of reflecting all these names and attributes of God, which immerses us in an ocean of spiritual, divine unity. And Robert, if I could ask you to read this quotation from one of Baha'u'llah's great mystical works, The Seven Valleys.
Robert,
Robert,
you're
you're muted.
For when the true lover and devoted friend reaches the presence of the beloved, the radiant beauty of the loved one and the fire of the lover's heart will kindle ablaze and burn away all veils and wrappings. Yea, all that hath from marrow to skin will be set aflame, so that nothing will remain save the friend. Whoso attained this station is sanctified from all that pertaineth to the world. Wherefore, if those who have reached the ocean of his presence are found to possess none of the limited things of this perishable world, where the earthly riches or worldly opinions, it mattereth not, for that which is with his creatures is circumscribed by his own limitations, whereas which is with God is sanctified therefrom. This is the station wherein the multiplicity of all things perisheth in the wayfarer and the divine countenance, dawning upon the horizon of eternity, rises out of the darkness, and the meaning of all on the earth shall pass away, but the face of thy Lord is made manifest. And when thou hast attained this highest plane and the most exalted degree, then shall you gaze on the beloved and forget all else. In this valley, the wayfarer passes beyond the stages of the unity of existence and the unity of appearance, and reaches a unity that is sanctified above both of these stations.
So how I look at this particular quotation is that it talks about one giving up one's limiting aspects or limiting definitions of self to adopt those of God, and therefore one becomes synchronized with God's identity, so to speak. And the limit for us is to mirror forth his names and attributes. And therefore we are with God in that sense. So let's explore then this concept of unity, of operating, but I want to see it as operating as a unit, as a singular entity or body, rather than what's commonly understood as a state of peace, so to speak. So we speak of an ocean rather than trillions of droplets. You know, we speak of one human body rather than trillions of cells. Each component part then has given over its self-identity, or rather prioritized its identity to be that of being in oneness with others, sharing the same essence, to form a singular entity. Do you understand what I'm talking about here? The cells of the body don't say, I am a cell of the body. They give up their self-identity to such a complete degree that you only see the unity that they manifest, which is the human body. So realization of this essential identity gives the drop of water the confidence that it encompasses all the qualities and powers of the ocean. It is essentially the ocean in one sense, regardless of other incidental secondary characteristics, such as its dimensions. So in looking at the essence of the drop and the essence of the ocean, they're essentially the same. They're in a state of unity with each other. Size, then, is a secondary incidental characteristic, while waterness is their shared essential reality. So how does this relate to our own essential reality? So as defined by Baha'u'llah, each human is a mirror of all the names and attributes of God. We share these names and attributes that are God's. So in this sense, and while holding this perspective, we're in a state of unity with God. What does this mean for our self-worth? If we accept this fundamental definition of the essence of human being, then we've been intrinsically validated by God, possessing the capacity to reflect all of his unlimited names and attributes. We are, in effect, unique and priceless. No external validation is necessary. Every individual being who has existed, is currently existing, and who will exist shares this essential reality. We are all equal in this station of our reality, with none better or inferior to one another. At the same time, we appreciate that each of us is unique because we have to mirror the name of God, the single, the unique. But this is an incidental secondary aspect of our being. And we find further differentiation brought about by circumstances of our birth, the location of our birth, the socio-economic circumstances of our upbringing, the religion of the land into which we were born, our own choices. But all of these we need to see as secondary and incidental and often accidental aspects of our identity and who we are. If I see myself in this way, as a mirror of all the names and attributes of God, then it follows that I must see everyone else as being unique and priceless in their essential capacity to mirror into this world the names and attributes of God. And I subordinate the more obvious incidental characteristics of their being, which I can see and experience, to this realization. But there's another factor we need to take into consideration, and that is the ability and extent to which we mirror these names and attributes positively and legitimately depends on our education. If I could ask Graham, if he's still there, to read perhaps this quotation, please.
Education is of three kinds: material, human, and spiritual. Material education aims at the growth and development of the body and consists in securing its sustenance and obtaining the means of its ease and comfort. This education is common to both man and animal. Human education, however, consists in civilization and progress. That is, sound governance, social order, human welfare, commerce and industry, arts and sciences, momentous discoveries, and great undertakings, which are the central features distinguishing man from the animal. As to divine education, it is the education of the kingdom and consists in acquiring divine perfections. This is indeed true education, for by its virtue, man becomes the focal center of divine blessings and the embodiment of the verse, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. This is the ultimate goal of the world of humanity.
Thank you. So it's this third level, divine education, that teaches us how to bring out and express legitimately things like our love, our compassion, our altruism, our kindness. We all possess them, and we give great value to our human education and intellect. We get pieces of paper and degrees. We think material education consists of Gucci brands and Louis Vuitton. And yet anyone who is involved in religion these days, particularly in the West, is looked down upon as needing a crutch. On the other hand, this quotation is saying that no, this is the highest level of education, and we all require it to train and develop the highest level of our being, such that we can have a comprehensive education. Colin, I just wonder if you could read this quotation for me, please.
Regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. If any man were to meditate on that which the scriptures, sent down from the heaven of God's holy will, have revealed, he would readily recognize that their purpose is that all men shall be regarded as one soul. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you. So he says here, education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures. Now this is interesting because it means that's the only means by which mankind or the soul of man can reveal its treasures. You can't coerce it, you can't force it, you can only educate it to reveal its treasures and enable all of humanity, the community around you, to benefit from it. So if the expression of these names and attributes is deficient or negative or has a detrimental effect on others, then it can be understood from this quotation that the individual expressing such negative behaviour simply has not yet educated himself to know the legitimate way to express the powers that the names and attributes of God give him. It doesn't change his inherent essential worthiness, because he still has this capacity to mirror the names and attributes of God into this shared physical world. As I am of the same stuff, I'm not superior to him in essence. However, in my being aware that his behaviour has a negative consequence to others, it would appear that my education in regards to his level of education is different, and therefore I have a responsibility to elevate this person. And again, it can only be through education, because that is how Baha'u'llah has restricted it. So I must empower him through education to release and realize the capacity he himself inherently possesses to reflect the names and attributes of God. And I've also got to give him the choice in how he manifests and exercises those in this shared world, which will hopefully be influenced by the word of God that itself defines the parameters of good action. I won't be much longer, friends, so please bear with me. Let's look then at the concept of judgment and judging others, because this is based on some idea or value that we hold dear to ourselves and of which we believe we have some degree of expertise. Take the example of the most wretched homeless person you have encountered, lying in his own filth, dishevelled, unwashed, stinking, and inebriated. Is he a human being? Yes. Is he capable of loving someone? We can assume yes. Is he capable of compassion? We can assume yes, because he's given some of the scraps of food he has just picked out of the garbage to feed a cat brushing against his leg. So it's safe to assume then that he too has been created by God and has the capacity to mirror into this world all his names and attributes in a unique proportion. So in my condemning this individual for being a filthy, bludgeoning no-hoper, I have applied to this man's current condition one or two ideas and values that I hold important and found this man wanting. I have assessed myself as superior to him. And how foolish of me, because any of my ideas and values are supported by and mirror into this world only one or two or several of the names and attributes of God, because that's what an idea stems from. And yet here I am comparing an entity that has the capacity to mirror all of the names and attributes of God into the world, and I've found erroneously that my ideas and values are more valid than this man's essential being and capacity, that not only encompasses these same ideas and values, but infinitely more. Again, we come back to the opportunity for education that this individual has received, and his self-awareness and our awareness and motivation to treat him as an expression of our own divine unity, an expression of human oneness, as an expression of our very selves. He is I. This is the folly of judging others. Similarly for the warmonger, he is also an entity capable of mirroring all the names and attributes of God into this world, and should therefore be respected as such, and held in compassionate wonder at how we allowed it to be possible for the expression of these names and attributes to have become so distorted. And the same for every distorted expression in between these two extremes that I've mentioned. This, of course, is not to say that negative behaviour should not be punished in order to maintain social order and deter others from expressing themselves similarly, but it should be done out of a sense of maintaining social order rather than vengeance. And that's a topic to be explored later. The point I wish to re-emphasise here is that regardless of the way we act in the world and the conditions in which we find ourselves, we remain essentially as mirrors of all the names and attributes of God, and therefore worthy of love and respect. No matter how wretched and horrible our actions, we are still validated by God in his continuing our life and existence. It would seem God has the hope, or perhaps the confidence, that with our very next breath, we might choose the path of our true purpose and begin our educational process at all three levels: the physical, the human, and the spiritual. So rather than judge others who appear less than ourselves, or nasty, or even evil, we should take responsibility for the social conditions that have resulted in their being at such a stage in their education, that they deem this behaviour and these circumstances as acceptable. How do we correct this behaviour? It's up to us to change their social conditions in both the short and long term, through service to building stronger community-focused neighbourhoods, by continuing to educate ourselves, and by helping to educate others in terms of helping them to recognise their true essential value and recognise the gems, the capacities that they have within them to help themselves and their community. So let's then look at redefining ourselves as being in a state of oneness with everyone else, and recognise their intrinsic worth and validation by God, and having this capability of mirroring the names of attributes of God. And having understood that I don't need to seek preference and distinction anymore in order to feel valued, and having understood that bad and evil behaviours are caused by a lack of comprehensive education at the physical, human and spiritual levels of human being, what happens then to the social issues of domestic violence if I have this understanding? What happens to the inequality between men and women, to homelessness, to the extremes of wealth and poverty, to famine and prejudice? Let's take, for example, the domestic violence. If I see my partner as being a mirror of the names and attributes of God, and that's the main way I see and define my partner, how can I allow myself to strike her? If I see someone who's homeless and is in need of the bare necessities of life, even food, how can I walk past them and ignore it without offering some kind of help? And of course, with each of us changing the way we look at ourselves and projecting a more comprehensive definition of what it means to be human onto others, and the more of us that take on this new definition, then they crystallize themselves into our social institutions over time, and our social institutions then start to reinforce this idea of our being noble, valued, unique mirrors of all the names and attributes of God. That, my friends, is my exploration of identity and their relation and its relationship to some of the social issues that we face, and how we might overcome them by adopting a much more comprehensive definition of ourselves by which we identify. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. That was excellent and possibly the most important topic imaginable. So, friends, we have time now for questions about David's topic. And the best way to organise questions is if you click on the reactions button and raise your hand, and then when you've finished, lower your hand. So please feel free to ask questions. And Ahmed.
Yeah, David, you described what we have to do. Definitely is right. But it looks, when you observe the world currently, you see that we are going towards the wrong direction. So is it possible that we have to go through this path of suffering before we are able to acquire these attributes that you're mentioning?
No, as far as I understand, the names and attributes of God are already there. The soul is a mirror. As long as you orient it towards God, it will reflect those names and attributes, but they are inherently there, intrinsically there. The most wretched human being has the capacity to do that. So
I mean, the
it's not that it's
realization.
suffering. Yeah, the realization then has to come about through education, which could be through suffering, but obviously not all of us have. We're all on the same continuum somewhere to discover or to appreciate the names and attributes of God within us. But of course, just recognizing that is not sufficient. You also need to learn what's the legitimate way of expressing them. And that is, I think, what is the cause of the suffering. If some people are expressing the name of some of the names and attributes of God in illegitimate ways, according to God, then that's going to clash with others. It's like gas molecules. They're all flying around in the same space, bumping into each other. It's chaotic. It's not like the flow of a river that's a liquid that flows in the same general direction. That's the best I could perhaps say, unless anyone else would like to share something.
Your question.
Sorry, Jung, you're on mute.
Thank you, David. Thank you for your scholar explanation of the topic. Science is one of my favorite subjects. I used to have 100% achievement target in science. When you talk about science, you talk about material and human education, and it's all about organizational improvement and project delivery in referral about science. And so immediately my mind was clicking. It's about total quality management, and just of, in American and Australian model of the business study. And with Japanese, it will be just in time. But another notion you mentioned is about spiritual education. So with spiritual education, there's a lot of countries, you know what I'm talking about, the socialist country, the communist country, they're very reluctant to educate people in a spiritual way, religious way. And actually when the regime changed or take over by the regime, the new regime, they close the church, they close all the worship, temples, everything. So people had to be productive, not like doing nothing and just pray, because you see, God, they don't believe in God, as you say. So therefore, you say education is very important, but that some countries, they don't accept it. And the other one is, you say oneness with everyone else. You say, according to the lecture, the bad and evil behaviors are caused by lack of comprehensive education at the physical, human, spiritual levels of human being. But some of the most educated people, they're not lack of education, they're not lack of comprehensive education, but they're tyrant, dictatorship. They're so smart, they run armies, thousands of soldiers die, no concern for humanity, no concern for anything, but only budget, project management, super, money, material, richness, conquer.
I would put that all down. I would put that all down to being very intellectually educated at the human level, but they obviously lack education at the spiritual level to appreciate the negative consequences of their actions.
Yeah, but they can kill millions of people, no problem. Nuclear power, nuclear weapons, yeah. And they're the most intelligent, educated people, leaders.
Which shows that intellectual and human education is not sufficient for us to live in unity.
They don't think about unity, because unity for them doesn't make money. It's not commercial. You can't sell weapons with unity.
Exactly.
They have 5 continents. 5 continents. So 5 continents will need productivity. We need to produce enough food to feed people. So what I'm saying is this, it's not as easy as we saw, because you are, according to your explanation, only blessed people who live in a peaceful country, democratic country. How can you analyze what is democracy and what's not? When women and men, if they are image from God, why the men get into the parliaments so easy, or get into the boardrooms so easy, but the women have a bit of difficulty to step in those places like that? I have no problem to run in and run out of the boardroom. I have no problem to get into the Parliament House. It's not my concern, but I'm talking about the crowd, the majority of women. They still, go behind, suffer, crying, a lot of things.
Do you want to say anything more to that question, David?
No, just that these very situations talk to the point that we have we're not getting a comprehensive education that includes the spiritual element to it, that rounds out our whole, or the understanding and operation of our whole being as physical, human, spiritual beings. We operate at a very intellectual way and therefore can't tell right from wrong. And someone suffers as a result, and there's disunity. We are not a healthy human body. Colin, did you have a question? Thank you, Will.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's interesting, and in a way I could see Yum's point, because the world is starting to grasp this concept of oneness, and yet how do they get there when there's so many enemies around? Abdul Baha talked about the concept of, he said, Baha'u'llah has drawn the circle of unity. And I think the idea of a circle and where you draw it is very powerful, and it can actually change. Like when we're talking about Australians, we're all Australians. But if you're talking about Victorians in New South Wales, well, we're in New South Wales, so I don't know if there's any Victorians here. It's very easy to change which circle we're in, just as a mental thing. Oh, sorry. Hey, Robert. I love Victorians.
And that's where that idea of from the Seven Valleys comes in, where you escalate, or you keep expanding your concept of self to embrace others. So your concept of self goes beyond your physical body to embrace your family. It goes beyond your family to embrace your neighborhood. It goes beyond your neighborhood to embrace your state population. It goes beyond your state to embrace your national population. And through influence of the Word of God, it can go beyond that to embrace every human being on the planet and every created thing, human and otherwise. But you've got to maintain that daily.
Look, it's easy
That's
to maintain.
what will overcome these issues.
Well, yeah, look, when there's an enemy, it's easy to unite. And some people say the world can't become united until there's an external enemy. Well, is there an enemy, whether it's internal or environment
the
or
enemy
something?
is self-centeredness, ego, because it confines your sense of identity to yourself.
So that's where the battle is. It's within ourselves.
I think so, yes.
Thank you, David. Parimal, I saw your hand up. Did you want to make a comment?
Ahmad's got his hand up. I don't know if...
Yeah, okay, we can come back to you, Parimal. Ahmad.
Yeah, I think we have to distinguish between two things. One is that acquiring a spirit of faith does not require education, and it's inherent in us to look for God and search for religion and things like that. But I think Abdul Baha, when he says that we need spiritual education, that causes the unity, that causes reduction of ego and those sort of things. And I think David is trying to say that part rather than acquiring of spirit of faith. Am I right, David? Is that what do you think? Because I think that
I haven't
the two have
touched
to be
on
separated.
I haven't touched on the spirit of faith aspect. It's just being under the influence of the Word of God, not necessarily even believing in it. Like, Australia is a secular country, but its laws are still very much based on Christian values. I don't have to believe in Christianity to operate as a good citizen in Australia. The laws are based on that notion, on the teachings of Christ, basically.
But are the laws of Christianity are causing unity and harmony in this country. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to distinguish between the two. The acquiring of a spirit of faith that God has put inherently in us does not depend on education. An illiterate person can acquire the faith to God. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, but spiritual education is the tool that causes harmony for us, unity for us.
Before we go to Nisha, I'd just like to welcome some newcomers. Let's see, we have Peter Warren, Nasrin Astani, Phil Arlene Sabelina, Apriyadi Dondi, Nasa Sedgi, and we had Graham Hassel earlier, and Zwingli, and I think there was a Nazarene there somewhere as well. So, but anyway, welcome, and please don't hesitate to ask a question or make a comment. Nisha.
Hi, David. On one of your slides, you asked a question, whose responsibility is it? So whose responsibility is it to impart this comprehensive three-way education that includes the human education, the material education, and the spiritual education? Whose responsibility is it?
Mine and yours and everyone else's.
Yeah,
and
so
ultimately our social institutions, or everyone. Yeah. It's everyone's responsibility.
Yeah, so how can we, I mean, obviously, like, you know, when you want to create and or you know, propagate the future, to start with these essential virtues or values, I personally think parenting is very, very important. You know, it's interesting how we need license to prove qualification for driving, for teaching, for doctoring. You know, we believe because
but
these
never
things
for
require
parenting.
professional qualification, because it's dangerous to have unqualified people. Yet there is no licensing for parents, despite the fact that, you know, how a child is raised shapes the kind of person they will become in future. What do you think?
Definitely. And the society that we create together. Definitely. So yes, I think it's definitely up to the individual, but of course that is even more essential for a parent, because they imprint these values then onto their children.
Yeah, that's so important, because I think it's just based on the line of work I do, and I, you know, see all these new, you know, parents, you know, to-be parents who come in there and they're so excited with this new baby that they're carrying. But, you know, sometimes, like, it's not just about being fixated with that particular pregnancy and how the baby is going to arrive and everything else around the birth of the baby, but the future of that baby. How are they going to educate this life to be a responsible, all-encompassing person?
And that actually brings me to a point. It's interesting. Just look at a child. How many of us scoff and laugh and mock and say, what a hopeless child that is, because just as they were starting to walk, they fell over. We don't. We congratulate them and encourage them even more. So why is it when we see someone with a lack of spiritual education who's causing problems in the world, why is it we laugh and scorn and scoff and criticize them? Yes, they may be causing problems and killing others, but we should have the same degree of compassion and think, no, I see that they have potential. They could still, at the next breath, choose to act differently if they knew and know differently. God doesn't give up on them, so how can we?
Yeah, true to that. Thank you, David.
Nasa.
Thank you, David. That was a fantastic presentation. To my understanding, what David explained, and then my own understanding of the Baha'i faith, it is very difficult at this stage for us to comprehend and reflect some of those quotations which David displayed, because as we reflect, humanity has gone through different stages of development. Right from, as Abdul Baha says, 6,000 years ago, and from, very early stage of tribal, and then now, according to Baha'i teachings, we are in a stage of embracing that universality. So therefore, and then as well as our educational level and maturity also, we are getting to that stage of maturity. Therefore, it is very difficult for us, because humanity didn't have any experience in the past, to be able to understand the whole concept of really that oneness and identity of the whole humanity as one. Humanity never had that experience in the past. Therefore, whatever we are trying to explain and explore, all this, our own understanding, it will be very immensely difficult to be able to come to a conclusion that how that world is going to look like. But the good news is, as we progress, everything gradually will be revealed, and then we will be getting that stage of really comprehensive unity will be clearly manifested. Therefore, whatever I try, and David tries, anyone else tries to picture those writings and then things which we witnessed, we saw and we read, it's going to be very difficult at this stage to grasp the depth of that writings. But as we go and progress, day by day, it will be clear. And the reason is quite clear. Humanity never had that sort of experiences of which David described, and we have the Baha'i vision is on that one to be able to understand. Thank you.
Thanks, Nasser. Zohar Khanum?
I'm sorry.
Yes. Thank you, David. I think it was beautiful. I love the things you said, that, the drop and ocean and cells and body. These are all, I loved it, because even I have heard it before. But how do we burn away all the veils? You say in the 7 bodies, he was saying that the veils, not to identify. Then what do I say about myself? I mean, I know we are all humans, but, I don't know the identifying ourselves of a whole.
Practice makes perfect, Zohar Khanum. Practice makes perfect. Day by day, little by little, day by day. Kam ruz beruz.
Yes, yeah.
So it's just engaging with the word of God morning and evening. And I think the other important part is to actually test the development of our qualities by going out into the real world and helping others, building community, because like any muscles, anyone who goes to the gym, you build muscle by meeting resistance. So you've got to have some resistance there, and you meet resistance in the real world to these ideas and this development and self-development. And it's through patiently, continually trying day after day that you build your spiritual muscles. Never give up. But if you do give up, well, you can expect that those spiritual qualities will diminish.
Do you always choose, like today I'm going to be truthful, or do you have all of them, you practice all at the same time? Like,
I think, I like to read one of the hidden words from Baha'u'llah as one of my daily readings, morning and evening. And I focus on what it's trying to tell me to do. But I always read them from the perspective of, okay, I'm at one with God in this spiritual world. What is this at this level? What is this hidden word at this level telling me? So at least, but of course, if you can then spend some time meditating on that, that will reinforce this sense of being in that spiritual space, so that you can then go out into the real world and engage with it from that perspective. But of course, it's not easy.
Yeah. What does it make us so like, I like to meditate while, talking or, communicating with people, but I always go quick, like you quick answer, or you want to do things like, I feel
the hasty decision maker, huh? Me too.
Yeah, I don't know how to go, like to meditate while you are living, like every minute of your...
I don't think you're meant to do meditation like that. I mean, but I think we're all very different. So, but give yourself some quiet time to actually meditate on what the Word of God is telling you.
Thank you.
Ahmed.
I've asked many questions today, but David, thanks for your talk. I was just wondering whether you agree that despite the past conflicts in history, that it's the role of religion to bring guidance for these spiritual attributes that you mentioned, this education, spiritual education.
It's really unfortunate that we have the name religion and science, because they're both knowledge systems. They're just at different levels. Science gives us access to understand the physical and intellectual world. Religion gives us knowledge to understand the spiritual world. And they're all just describing cause and effect. That's the whole basis of reality, cause and effect. If I do this, this will happen. If I do that, something else will happen. Science teaches us that for the physical world. Religion teaches us that for the spiritual world. If I love someone a certain way, like a partner that I've committed to in marriage, and if I maintain my love within the confines of that marriage, I will have a happy marriage and be a contented person. If I stray outside the marriage, I will cause all kinds of social problems for my own marriage and others. Cause and effect. There's nothing amazing about it, and there should be nothing that, it's just like going to university. Science might be considered primary school, university might be considered the religious or the spiritual education that we receive. So there should be no distinction. It's just a continuum of education. It's just that once we start to get into the spiritual level of our being, it takes on a different name and is presented in a different way. Because we can't see it, it's about the invisible world. We can't get access to measure it, so to speak. So God gifts it to us through revelation, through the Word of God. And he says, you've got the intelligence to discover these scientific things for yourselves through observation. Go ahead and do it.
I just want to say here that I believe in the concept that these spiritual attributes that are godly are things that we have to develop ourselves in this world, like the baby that is developing arms and legs for this world. So if we believe that these attributes will be kind of institutes of our body that we will have in the next world, that the soul will use, then it becomes very important for us to gain these attributes. Do you think this is
Of
kind
course.
of aligned
Yes.
with?
Definitely. But of course, we've lost the primacy
Connection.
of that understanding, and we give, priority to everything of the physical world. Our values are upside down.
Exactly.
We live in a very ungodly time.
Well, see, we've discovered the vastness of universe. Now, because we cannot comprehend this vastness, we've ignored the existence of God. Many people say this vastness of creation has no creator, because they can't comprehend existence of some essence that has created this vastness.
We are very insecure in our own being, and yet if we adopt this concept or definition of self, that we are of God, at least to the point where we can mirror his names and attributes which are infinite, then oh my God, I'm the most powerful thing on this planet. We're all superheroes. But we have to develop those
If we
qualities.
follow those attributes, of course.
I'll
Colin.
have to go to Canamble to see the most powerful being on the planet.
Just look within, Colin. Look within.
Oh, okay. I was thinking about your points that we learn by cause and effect, and I think we're learning by cause and effect that humanity is one, because when we don't behave as one, then the effect is bad. It's like a human body is one entity, and if the arms were fighting the legs and the legs were fighting the heart and the heart was fighting the brain, it would be dysfunctional and very uncomfortable. So, but when they work together,
let's take that a little further, Colin. Take the idea of the concept of a cancer cell. It's just a normal cell that all of a sudden decided to be self-centered and say, I don't want to be part of this body anymore. I want those around me to be just like me, self-centered. You will be in my image, not in the image of unity. And it gets to the point where it propagates that so much that it actually kills the host. And that's the situation we're in. We're in a cancerous state because if we are self-centered, because we're going against the very nature of our essential reality to be at one with each other.
So it sounds like we need to learn cooperation, not just improve ourselves and hope that everyone else is, but to actually recognize that the world, the economy is insecure, the environment's insecure, the relations between nations is insecure. So we have to, when it becomes so uncomfortable, perhaps decision makers will say, oh, well, it's just too bad. We actually have to do something now. And I'm thinking of collective security, where, for example, if we have a cancer, the whole body will take itself to the doctor and get it removed. And maybe that applies on a global scale as well.
We can hope.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if a small number of people doing the right things, to do, I want to know, like they say, butterfly effect, like even if a small number of people are doing the right things, still there is hope that the world will be a better place then. What do you think about that? How small that could make a big impact?
Zahra Khanum, if you get a glass of water and put a drop of food dye in it, will it have effect? Will it change the color of the water?
Yeah, yes. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
What happens if you put that drop of dye in the ocean? Well, it's going to have an effect. It's just going to be scaled effect. So yes, of course it will have an effect, but it's scaled, so to speak. You know, it's at different levels of scale. So the more that each of us approaches our communities and each other and our family members and everyone we meet in our work each day, respecting that they are mirroring back to me the names and attributes of God who I love and worship and adore, and who are actually me, but just in a different entity, a different body, then the more we will have this effect of creating a better world.
Thank you. Yes, we have to
Even
work
when they
hard.
test you, even when they test you.
Yes. We have to work harder. I mean, everyone.
Colin, we are getting about to 9 o'clock, and Siva had the habit of asking the newcomers to tell a little bit about themselves. I start with David, if you could mention, and there's a few more people here that are new to our gathering.
Or is it okay, Yum? We're just going to give Phil, Peter, Nazrin, Priyadi, Dondi, anyone else who'd like to say or ask anything.
Just maybe introduce themselves as well. Oh, Siva is here.
Thank you, David, for the wonderful presentation. The place and the circumstances I'm in, I'm unable to, do what I used to do. I like the idea that the example that you gave, the droplets and cells, and the unity, and education is the key, and the education, material, human, and the spiritual education together is the key. And also I learned that, we have our identity as individuals, Siva, David, Zore, Colin, from Sri Lanka or India or Africa, whatever it is. So these are kind of identity we necessarily have to use here for our material concerns and progress, but there's a higher identity, I suppose, that is. And I wanted to thank Colin and Ahmed for doing this superbly. And I hope that you can do for the next few weeks. And there's a friend here, Peter Warren. He will be our speaker in a few weeks' time. Peter, would you like to say anything?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Siva, and I apologize, I was a little late tonight, so I didn't get to hear all of David's talk, but I appreciate the content of the principle of education, and I've enjoyed listening to all the questions and answers just in the last little while. So I appreciate that all of you are people of God. We're all brothers and sisters. I have more of a Christian background, and I apologize for just being an average white elderly male. But I really can't do very much about that. But
secondary characteristics, Peter. Secondary characteristics. We're seeing the inner gems.
I really love the diversity of faces and origins and people that are on my screen here tonight, and it's fantastic that we have the technology and lovely community in the country of Australia to be able to meet in this way and share ideas and beliefs and all of that wonderful opportunities we have here in Australia to meet together in this way. But anyway, Siva has given me the enormous privilege of asking me to address this group on the 16th of June. So I'm starting to prepare some words for that. My background, I won't give you too much tonight. I'll give you a little bit more background on the 16th, but I've been involved in the interfaith community in Sydney for about 15 years or more. It sort of came about after 2005. I don't know if some of you will remember I live in the Sutherland Shire, and we had a little bit of an event in the summer of 2005, which some of you will be aware of. It was called the Unrest. And it was a bit of an ethnic divide between some sections of our community. And that really got me thinking about a lot of things. And it made me question my background and my culture. And so it sort of opened my eyes and thinking and thoughts to others. I kind of get the impression that some of you are, or most of you are from the Baha'i faith, which I think is fantastic. I actually visited your temple up there on the northern beaches several years ago, and I was given a lovely tour of your facility by one of the members there, and I really enjoyed that. I have to admit, I do not know a whole lot about the Baha'i faith, except that you're very open to communing with people from other religions, which is sensational. I must admit that from my Christian background, it's a bit of an embarrassment for me that we're not perhaps as open as people like the Baha'i to communing with people from other religions. So anyway, I'll close off there. I think I've spoken long enough. So I'll have
Peter, I see your camera is open, but we can't see you. So I'm wondering whether something is wrong. It would be nice to see you as well.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I've been having some technical issues with my IT recently. So I'm not an IT expert. I'm just a user of these gadgets, and if I can,
well, we will see you on 16th.
Hopefully I can get it to work by then.
Yes, and we also have Phil, Arlene.
Hi, hello. I am Arlene from the Philippines, from Palawan, Philippines. Yeah. I just chanced to see this Zoom meeting from the largest Baha'i group official. So I took the chance to participate tonight. So I'm just so happy and full of love, like just reflecting on the topics that were discussed about unity and the importance of education. And really, it's very important that, especially about motherhood, that among women, education is really important, and because the first teachers in the family. So I hope I will be able to participate next time. I'll just check on the website on the largest Baha'i group. Actually, I just joined
the same link, same time, so you can make a note of it.
Yeah. So I really wanted to visit the Baha'i temple in Australia. Hopefully one day I can be there.
Sure.
So meet you guys. And,
most welcome.
Yeah, and every night, like every Thursdays, but we do it earlier, like at 7 here, Philippine time. we have our study on the hukuk. We study about hukukula. So
Okay.
yeah, so in a while I will be going out, signing off, because I will be joining the next group.
Thank you. We are going to close as well. Thank you very
So
much, and you are
I'll
welcome to come.
next time. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you. And Apriyadi Dondi, would you like to say something? Anyway, he is not there, and also our friend Sachi. I'd like to hear from Sachi.
Thank you, Colin. I live in Indonesia that have some little bit problem about education, because more people here is not good education. It means lack of knowledge about religion. About religion is lack of knowledge. Then show intolerance. Some people intolerant and have more not like about the Baha'i faith. Yeah. Then Baha'i faith is not so expand, is not so good. Yeah. How to solve problem in here? I have to ask David. Can make some tips for the develop then social condition. Thank you.
We can connect you with David. We'll share your contact with David. If you can send us your details, we can connect you with David and we can have discussions. And you can join us in our future meetings as well. Thank you. If nothing.
Yes, can I say, but let's feel, who were you calling before? Siva? You were calling someone else before me.
Tachi.
Okay, Tachi. Where's Tachi? Can Tachi carry on first? Or he's not there anymore?
I'd like to thank David for your good lecture. Actually, I don't have any questions on that because and the time is also up. Anyway, thank you very much. It was very good. Thank you.
I'll just introduce myself. Thank you very much for Siva. Siva put in the big group, so I thought, okay, let me join. I don't even know where Siva live, or I've not even seen Siva, but yes. I guess, Siva, are you Silan's brother?
Not
Anyway.
Silan's brother, but we have the same origin, Sri Lanka.
Yes, my sister also married to Sri Lankan, Ravichandran. But anyway, I live in Indonesia. So
Right.
Thank you so much, David and Collins. I learned a lot today. It was very inspiring. And yes, I guess this is wonderful to come to the Interfaith, because we are also trying our best and getting very close to Interfaith relationship and program in Indonesia. And today I put your link. I did ask Siva for permission if I can put to everyone. And I'm
Sure.
very happy that Zwingli, who is our close friend from Christian, and also Apriyadi Dodi, who is a new believer in the faith, joined. So it's very inspiring. Thank you so much again, David and Collins. I will tell you stories next time. I guess now for your time is a bit late. We are only here 6:30 in the evening, so it's a good time for us. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next
Thank
week.
you. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And sorry, we need to close, but I'll put you in touch with David because he's a friend of mine. I know how to find
Thank you,
him.
David. Thank you for a wonderful talk. And I think the souls belong to the house of the Lord anyway. That's my last statement. Our souls is in the house of the Lord, in paradise, always. Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you, David.
everybody.
Thank you, David.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice to
Good
see all your
night.
faces.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Thank
everyone.
you, David.
Bye-bye.
Good
Thank
night,
you, David.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Ahmed was recording and he's gone, so I think the recording is finished. Bye, everyone.